Healthy eating starts in the kitchen. Hi, my name is Winnie Chen. I am a registered dietitian. Today we're going to be learning about some cooking techniques and some of the best kitchen practices so that you will feel more confident and inspired to cook for your clients. Food plays an essential role in promoting health and well-being. There's nothing more comforting, nutritious, and delicious than a home-cooked meal. If you came to this job without knowing how to cook, this video is just right for you. I have worked in the group homes for many years, and I learned from you that you want recipes that are easy, nutritious, and also taste great. So let's create something that is. When it's come to cooking, it's always best to start with the recipes. There are 4 points you want to remember about the recipes. First, read the recipe twice. The recipe has 2 parts, the ingredient list and the steps. You want to make sure you read through both. Know how many servings the recipe will serve, so that you will know if you need to adjust the recipe accordingly, like doubling the recipe or cutting it down because you have more or less people to serve. You also want to know how much time it takes to prepare the meal from start to finish, so that you can give yourself enough time to prepare the dish. Perhaps some prep work can be done ahead of time. Gather all your ingredients and necessary tools before you cook. You want to stay organized. Many times, staff can't cook the recipe because they either don't have the ingredients or the tools to do the job. If you want to be successful in cooking, you must have the right equipment, tools, and gadgets. You don't necessarily need to buy the ones that are expensive or match in colors. If you have the basics, you can cook up just about anything. Let's talk about some of the pots and pans. You want to have at least 3 pots, one for the soup, the other one maybe for the stew, and small one for the sauces. Same thing with the pans. You want to have one for general sauteing or stir fry, and maybe a small one for the frying eggs. Knife is an essential piece of a tool that you have to have in the kitchen. You basically need 3 kinds of knife: a chef knife, or an all-purpose knife, and a paring knife for smaller items, a serrated knife for breads. One thing you want to remember is your knife must be kept sharp. If you have trouble cutting a tomato, that means it's time to sharpen it. Let's talk about some of the smaller gadgets. You want to have a grater, a peeler, a can opener, and also some spatula and tongs. I like to have a little brush because it allows me to brush some oil onto some of the dishes. Measuring cups are also very important. These kind of measuring cup is measuring solid. These kind of measuring cup is measuring liquid. A strainer is very important. I also like to have some stainless bowl or glass bowls in the kitchen. Plastic ones don't work that well because you might damage your bowls when you do the mixings. I want to also talk about some of the smaller equipments. A blender is a must-have. A blender allows you to make a healthy smoothie for your clients. Some clients are on puree diet, so a blender works really well. A mixer is really good for making cakes and some desserts. Some nice to have are rice cooker and a food processor allow you to save some time in chopping. Keeping everyone safe, free from injury, is also a top priority in cooking. So I want to go over some food safety tips here. Here are a few points to consider. Never put a dirty knife in a sink filled with dishes or soapy water. Do not leave the knife on the counter unattended. I know in many group homes, the knives or other sharp equipment are locked away. Use dry mittens when handling foods in the oven or microwave. Turn pot handles away from you to avoid spills. Use different cutting boards, one for the meat and the other one for fruits and vegetables, to avoid cross-contaminations. You also want to keep raw meats and vegetables away from each other. Preferably, raw meats are stored on the bottom and vegetables are stored on the top of the refrigerator. Wash your hands thoroughly before you cook. If you need sneeze, wash your hands again. Lastly, clean your refrigerator at least once a week. You want to get rid of any cooked items that have been stored in the refrigerator over 3 days. Now that we know what we need to have in the kitchen, let's talk about how we can make something that's nutritious and also delicious. One point to keep in mind is always start with the freshest ingredients. By focusing on foods that are fresh, seasonal, and minimally processed, you can ensure that you can easily make a meal that's easy, nutritious, and also tastes great. Today, we are going to make a one-pot dish called chicken vegetable rice soup. I love soup because it has a good balance of carbohydrate, protein, and fat. And when you add a lot of vegetable to it, it also gives you a good source of vitamins, minerals, and fluid to keep your body satisfied and nourished. When you make a pot of soup, you always want to start with 3 basic ingredients: onion, celery, and carrots. And then you want to give it more substance by adding protein like chicken and some rice or pasta. Then you season with dry herbs or fresh herbs and some spices. I'm going to show you how to cut onion today because onion is one of very common ingredient found in many recipes. With the onion, what you want to do is you always want to cut the end first. And you want to cut it in half so that it makes easy for you to remove the outer skin. If you want to cut your onion julienne, meaning in long strips, you can cut it like this way. Now you get things that are julienne. Now let's say if you want to cut your onion chop, that means in the bigger cube pieces, you can cut it like this. Let's say you want your onion to be more finely chopped. You want to cut your onion crosswise so you can get more tiny pieces. And then you can chop it this way. This will be more like finely chopped. Let's say if your onion, you want it to be minced, what you do what they call cross chop. You hold your knife like this, and you just go rock back and forth. When I make a pot of soup, I like to saute my vegetable first to get the aroma on. So what I like to do is I like to turn on the stove first, heat it up first to make sure it's nice and warm. And then I'm going to put some oil in there. And then I'm going to saute first with the onion. To make sure that I don't burn the onion, then I will turn the stove to low heat. And I'll cook the onions for about 5 minutes. When the onion becomes clear and soft, you don't want it to be brown because then we'll change the color of the soup. Now, when we talk about healthy cooking techniques, people always think about steaming, but actually there's a lot of healthy cooking techniques that people can utilize. Barbecuing is a really good one, but there's also others like sauteing, like blanching, which is a really nice technique. A blanching basically is you bring a pot of water into boil and you put a drop of oil in the water and then you add your vegetable in there and you blanch it maybe for about a minute or 2 until it's slightly cooked, and then you can take it out. When the vegetables are out, you can taste a little bit of the oil on the vegetable, but at the same time, you're not getting a lot of grease on your food. So that's one of a technique I like to use. Certainly baking is really good. Broiling is really good. Broiling means that you are cooking the vegetable or the meat at a higher temperature. So typically around 450 Fahrenheit. So now this onion is nice and soft. We're gonna add other vegetable to it. I'm gonna add celeries. And then I'm also gonna add some carrots to it. And again, I'm just gonna let it saute for about 2 or 3 minutes. The difference between sauteing and stir fry is stir fry you use a higher heat. You saute the vegetable more quickly. With sauteing, you use more a medium heat so that you're cooking the vegetable a little bit more slowly. While this is cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and start with my soup. So I have a pot of water that's already boiled. Adding meat to the soup really provide a more robust, more depth to the flavors. I actually like to have bone-in meat better, but if you have chicken breast, that's fine too. Now the vegetable is well sauteed, I'm gonna add that to my soup. And then I'm also going to season it with some fresh spices and herbs. Now, fresh is always the best. Fresh is always the best, but if you have the dry one, that will be fine too. Notice I didn't chop these herbs because I'm just going to let the flavor goes into the soup so that I can take them out more easily. Had I chopped them, it will be harder for me to take out. So I'm gonna close the lid and then turn the pot to simmer so that it can cook slowly for about 30 minutes. While the soup is cooking, simmering, having all the flavors start going in, I wanna start cooking my rice, which is a grain product. You don't have to use rice. You can also use pasta. You can also use some whole grains like farros or even beans, which is a complex carbohydrates. So what I'm gonna do is I am going to add water to the pot. The ratio of cooking the rice is usually 2 to 1, meaning 2 cups of water for 1 cup of rice. Now, different grains have different ratio. It's always a good idea to check the back of the package to find out what's the exact ratio. But for rice purpose, it's usually 2 to 1. So we're gonna heat up the water, let it boil, and then we are going to add the rice in and let it simmer. Now the water is nice and boiled, I'm gonna add my rice in. And then I'm going to cover it, and then I'm gonna turn the heat to simmer to let it cook for about 10 to 15 minutes. Now this is where a rice cooker comes in handy because a rice cooker gives the perfect texture. But if you don't cook rice on a daily basis, using a pot with a lid on to cover it to simmer is also workable. Now the soup has been cooking for 30 minutes. I'm ready to add the last ingredient, which is the rice and also the herb and spices. It smells so good. Remember, mitten for food safety, so you don't burn yourself. I'm gonna add some of the grains in there. And then I'm gonna season with pepper. And also a little bit of salt. If you are worrying about the sodium content, actually adding a little bit of salt very last doesn't add too much sodium to the soup. But if you added the salt earlier on, you actually had to add more to get the flavor. So just adding a little bit really gives the soup a little bit more depth. I also like to add more other spices like a lemon rind. Dill also works really well. So this is the rind that I'm gonna grate a little bit in. One pot of dish, easy to clean up, and it's balanced with all the nutritious food that your body needs. We have reviewed a lot of information today. I hope you can digest them all. Remember, no matter what kind of condition your client is in, good nutrition and health come hand in hand, and all start with home cooking. With a bit of planning and practice, you can prepare healthy, nutritious meals that engage all the senses, making meal a pleasure experience for you and your clients. Not everyone gets to say they cook and eat for their job. You are lucky that you got the opportunity to do so. So enjoy it. Are you ready to get cooking here?